Alright, first things first, fit check. Fit check. We got the fit check, okay. Here's my Band-Aid. Can you see? And that Band-Aid signifies that I have been on testosterone for 1 year. Ooh, okay. Do I do like a ah, okay.
Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to the video. I am your host Milo, and I am like 30 minutes on testosterone, 1 month on T. Nothing's changed.
2 months on T, and I'm almost 2 weeks post-op. But this is my 3 months on T update. So this is my 4 and 5 month update on my puberty. I am 6 months on testosterone. Hey there, 7 months update video today. But 8 and now 9 months on testosterone. 11 months, that's real close to a year. Hi, my name is Milo, and this is my voice, 1 year on testosterone. So, peep the chest. It's designer. It's 10 months post-op. So that's nice. So in this video, I'm not really going to be talking about any of the physical changes because it's all the same as it's been the last update videos. Everything's progressing as normal and everything is progressing well. So there's not much to report on that end. I would say at a year, everything starts to level out a little bit. Nothing feels as drastic. Everything just feels like it's progressing as normal. I mean, nothing ever felt like a shock. Nothing ever felt drastic because the changes are so gradual. Even like I started on a 0.4 milliliter dose, which is pretty fucking high. And even then, it's not like you wake up the next morning and you don't even like recognize yourself, you know, like it's very gradual changes, but some of them do feel a little bit wild and wacky like any puberty would. So I would say at a year, it definitely starts to level out, of course. So this is my any percent speed run of puberty. I'm so happy. So the 18th, June 18th, is the day that I started testosterone. So on the 18th, I had a little celebration with my mom, and we went and had a picnic, and it was lovely. And my boyfriend bought me candy and soda, and it was a whole celebration. And as I said, if I get 2 puberties, I should get 2 birthdays. So June 18th is sort of my trans birthday now. So yeah, but I am so happy with my body. I am so happy with the changes that my body has gone through, and even the ones that I was scared about or unsure about or that I thought would make me feel more insecure about myself. It really doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm so happy and confident in myself, and it outweighs any other amount of insecurity that I could possibly feel. And nothing compares, like no amount of minor insecurities compare to what dysphoria felt like. So, testosterone saved my life, and top surgery saved my life. And more so than any antidepressant, you know, any other medication or treatment that I could have been on to possibly alleviate the mental and emotional pain that I was in, this is what did it. Like, this is what I needed. This is what was good for me. And I am eternally grateful to have the privilege to be able to medically transition, because it honestly is the best thing that's ever fucking happened to me. So with that said, I think I'm just going to talk about my journey a little bit. So I first realized that I was trans my freshman year of high school, but even a little bit the summer before. And I figured it out because only like a year before that had I started thinking about my sexuality and realizing at the time I identified as bisexual. And so I started following all these accounts on Instagram that were like gay positive, like queer owned accounts where people were posting just like memes and like positivity and news in the community and just stuff like that. And it mostly all the accounts were like had multiple owners of the accounts. And so people were posting about all these different genders and sexualities that I didn't even know existed. And so I really educated myself a ton about a lot of different identities in the community. And I learned mostly about non-binary identities, and those were like the loudest voices in the circles that I ended up exploring. And so I ended up identifying as non-binary, and there's kind of a lot of, not trauma per se, but I have a lot of issues that I'm still kind of struggling with how long I identified as non-binary, being afraid to come out as fully male, even though I knew that I was a boy for much longer than I identified as one outwardly. So I was really scared to come out as male, and I stayed as non-binary for a really long time, and it was very harmful for me, because, I mean, just kind of knowing that I could have been at this point a lot earlier in my life had I accepted myself sooner and yada yada. So I'm not really gonna talk about that so much because I don't want to cause any beef with the non-binary community. Like, there's nothing wrong with it per se, but had I understood that being non-binary and being binary trans are two very different and not super comparable experiences all the time, would have been really helpful for me, because I kind of thought that it was like, here was me, here was like non-binary, and then here was binary trans, and I had to like get through non-binary to get to binary. And so I was just like, okay, I have to really ease myself into being male because there's all these other identities between male and female, and I have to like, it was hard for me. It was hard for me. So I identified as a demigirl. I used she, they. Then about a year later, I started just using they, them. Then about another year later, I started using he, they. And then about 2.5 years ago, I started exclusively using he, him. And I first changed my name the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of high school. And I'm about to be a sophomore in college. And I changed it to Clay. So I went by Clay for a while. And that was also another thing where basically my transition existed in a way where I wanted it to be the least inconvenient for the people around me. And so I was trying really, really hard to just make it easier for other people to get used to and accept my transness and my identity. So with me creeping along with the pronouns, it was like, hey, like, if you guys would be cool with like using they sometimes, like only if you want to, you know. It was very much that. It was very much like, let me get you used to the they, them thing for a little bit, and then maybe like eventually I'll earn my way to a he pronoun. Like, that was literally my thought process, was just like, let's get everyone like accustomed to this, And when I changed my name, it was basically a male take on my birth name. It wasn't a name that I necessarily wanted or like resonated with. It was just like, hey, this will be really easy for people to get used to, so that's what I'm going to change my name to. Hopefully that's okay with you guys. Like, I was very scared, and I was very trying to appeal to everyone else's comfort. And the biggest piece of advice that I would ever give to any young trans person is that your transition is for you. And you cannot think of it in terms of other people's comfort, because you will only hurt yourself in that process. And if you're going to transition, or if you're going to start using another set of pronouns or another gender identity, do that for you and only you. And don't take other people into consideration, because it's for you and it matters for you. And everyone else is going to get used to it, or they're not. And there's going to be work that has to be done with some people, but it's better that you do what you need to for yourself and then do that work, rather than not doing what you need to for yourself and still doing that work and then eventually crawling your way into what you actually needed. Put your needs first, and you'll have to do the work either way, because that's the world we live in. And there's going to be some people who don't understand at first, and there's going to be some people who don't get it and don't want to. But it's just so important that you don't let that stop you. And it's really, really hard. It's really hard. But that is my biggest piece of advice, because that was one of the biggest things that hurt me during my transition. And then, of course, the other big thing that hurt me was just dysphoria and dealing with that. And those two things kind of go hand in hand, because they, them pronouns made me dysphoric and make me dysphoric. She, her pronouns, of course, were awful for me. And so not allowing myself to come out using he, him caused me to sit in this like pool of dysphoria a lot longer than I needed to, because I mean, I would have still had body dysphoria, but the affirmation of being at least addressed and somewhat perceived as male would have really, really helped me. And so that was just another big thing. And dysphoria is the worst and most excruciating emotional and psychological pain and torment that I've ever experienced. It's almost impossible to explain. But I mean, I guess if you're cis and you're trying to imagine what dysphoria would be like, imagine just literally if you woke up in the body of the opposite sex one day. And like at first you'd be like, oh, sweet, you know, it'd be kind of fun and whatever. But like, because we all imagine that every once in a while. But if you could imagine that a month goes by, if you could imagine that 3 months go by, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and you're still trapped in that body, if you just do that thought experiment for a little bit and imagine the sort of novelty of having boobs or whatever wear off for a second, and then start thinking about what that actually would be like psychologically to be in the body of the opposite sex, that's what dysphoria is like. Except on top of that, everyone your entire life believes and is telling you and is trying to gaslight you into believing that you were never the other, like the sex that you are. And like you've always been this way, and this is who you are, and this is what you're meant to be, even though you inside you know. And that's just like part of the society that we live in. That's not a commentary on like my immediate family or my friends or anything, but that's just how it is for trans people. And dysphoria, I mean, everyone says this, but it really does feel like you're trapped. You're just trapped in this like prison of your body, and it feels like it's never gonna change and it's never gonna get better. And it's just like, when you look in the mirror, I mean, my chest dysphoria was the worst thing for me. I don't really have bottom dysphoria that much, or like I'm have no problem with my hips or my legs, but my chest dysphoria and like my waist used to go in way more than it does. Everything about kind of my upper physique, my face, and my voice was a really bad one too. It just is so painful to look at yourself and perceive yourself and listen to the sound of your own voice. Like talking and hearing myself hurt. And like, that's something you gotta do. Like, that's something you just do every day. And it's just, I mean, full disclosure, I was suicidal for a long time, kind of on and off. Like, there were periods of my life where the suicidal feelings were exacerbated by other mental health issues. Of course, you know, it's high school. And then there are periods of my life where the suicidal feelings, dysphoria, suicidal feelings were manageable because of other good things happening in my life. But either way, they were always kind of there. And it's just, you want a way out. And one of the ways out is transition. And one of the ways out is suicide. And transition is really fucking difficult to obtain for many reasons. Emotionally, practically, and just like socially. It's very difficult to obtain medical transition because you have to reconcile with yourself, you have to reconcile with the people around you. If you're a minor, your parents have to consent to your transition, and that can be really difficult because that makes it so your life is not in your hands, it's in the hands of your parents, and they have to decide whether or not that's good for you. And then, of course, when you actually go to the doctors, there's some procedures that they have to do where they have to kind of do a mental health screening and make sure you're seeing a therapist and everything, which I agree with all of those practices. I think that, like, that was never a problem for me. But I also live in a place where it's very, very accessible to get medical care for dysphoria, and in most other places, even in the United States, it is much harder than it is where I live. So I'm very blessed about that. But yeah, I was definitely suicidal for a lot of high school. And I just couldn't see myself. I just couldn't see it ever getting better. I could never imagine myself being being the me that I am now. And it was really hard. It was really painful all the time. I remember that. I remember that pain very strongly. And it's also just the perception of the people around you, because you're constantly worried about whether or not people actually see you the way you see yourself. And of course they don't, or they can't. I mean, a lot of times, even the most supportive people, like, they see you the way you see yourself, right? But for me, at least, it was like that I always felt like they'll never see me the way I see myself because I don't look or sound the way that I see myself. Like, it's not there. So how could they see it? It's imaginary. Like, they have to imagine it and then place it onto me, even though that's not what's really there. And that is the hard thing about it. And I also had a lot of traumatic experiences with people who were really, really close friends of mine, who I then found out that they actually perceived me as a girl throughout our friendship, or at least they did not perceive me as a man. A lot of people perceived me, well, not a lot of people, but the experiences that I had where I had some friends and even a partner who I found out at the end that they actually perceived me either as a woman, or just said to me, like, I don't think I'll ever see you as a man, or I don't think you'll ever be a man. It's just not, like, it's not who you are. And it was just things like that that were like, oh, you know, as much as people are supportive of me and as much as people in my life use my name and my pronouns and affirming language for me, it's just still like my own self-image and the way that the majority of people, especially strangers, perceive me is just not how I want to be seen, and it's not what's real for me. So it's hard. Dysphoria is fucking awful. And it hindered a lot of really important relationships for me, to be honest. It made it hard for me to get close to people, and it made it hard for me to trust people. And it just got between a lot of really important relationships. And, but it got better. And my depression got better, my dysphoria got better, my suicidal feelings went away completely upon the further I got into my transition. I mean, even before I started medically transitioning, the longer I identified as male, the better it got. The longer people used he, him, and then of course when I changed my name to Milo, which is a name that I'm really happy with and that I did a lot of deliberation and much more consideration of my own feelings on, everything started to get better. And of course, like, there's things you can do with cutting your hair and dressing differently, and I actually did a lot of work to masculinize my voice pre-transition as well, where I trained myself to speak in a really low range. So that was another thing. I mean, things started to get better already, even before I transitioned. Socially transitioning is still also transition and is still also extremely helpful. And I mean, keep in mind, I'm sure this goes without saying, but this is just my experience. There are so many varieties of trans experiences, binary and non-binary, that are completely different from mine. So I'm not meaning to speak for everyone for any of this. But yeah, so I began my medical transition a year ago, and I just want people to know that it gets better. Like, you can get out of it. You can get out of that place of dysphoria and those feelings of this is never gonna change, and I'm never gonna be male, or, you know, I'm never gonna be my, the cat is here. I'm never gonna be my, you know, the gender that I identify as, and it's never, just any of those never thoughts are not true. They're just not true. And it might be a long wait for some people, but you're going to get there. Dysphoria, like, is manageable. You just need treatment, or if not medical treatment, you need social treatment, you know, like, there are things you can do. It's not permanent. It's not going to hurt you forever. And I just really want to put that message out there. And for me, it was medical treatment and medical transition. That's what helped me. But so 1 year ago, I started testosterone. I was really scared too, because I had always imagined that I was just gonna grow up into male puberty, or into a man. Like, I thought that I was gonna grow up into a man. Even after I got through female puberty, and even like throughout high school, I had this like idea in the back of my brain that was like, well, you know, this is kind of right now, but like, I am gonna grow up into a man. Like, when I think of myself in the future, it's like a cis passing dude. Like, this is gonna fix itself. Like, my brain really knew, you know, because my brain is fully male, and so my brain is like, yeah, I'm expecting to grow up into a man. And then I had to really face, like, no, you have to actually take action to make that happen for yourself. And you have to pay money to make that happen for yourself. And so having to, like, willingly induce puberty in yourself is really fucking hard to do because no one wants that shit. No one wants to go through puberty again. That shit sucked last time. It's really hard to be like, okay, like, I have to put myself through about, 3 years of suckage again, and then, like, at the end of that, like, I'll be cruising, and I'll be fine, and, like, all my problems will be gone. And it's like, oh my god, like, to start that process is a really difficult mental hurdle, at least for me. So I had a therapist, and I talked to them about it, and I wrote out all the pros and cons, and it was just like, yeah, the pros are gonna outweigh the cons, but also, like, mentally prepare for the cons. Like, I knew my skin was gonna get worse. I knew that I was gonna get kind of greasy and sweaty and oily and be, I mean, there's a lot about puberty that I thought I was going to be ugly. I was really scared that I was going to be ugly, an ugly boy. And, like, that's a very shallow thing, but it's also, like, I was already struggling so much with my self-image that the thought of, like, being ugly was really scary. And I was just like, I don't want to make, like, I know how to manage what I'm going through right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to know how to manage it when my body is changing, Maybe you don't know, but that's what it was. Hi, baby. Mwah. I'm filming a video right now. You want to hop down? All right. But eventually I decided that it was right for me. I talked to my parents about it. I don't remember it even really being a conversation. I think I just was like, I want to go on hormones. And they were like, okay, sounds legit. It just was, it was something that I told rather than asked. And it was something that they, I guess I was already 18 by the time I started, but I still kind of needed their blessing, just because, I love them and I trust them and I knew they would be okay with it, but also, like, I'm under their insurance and just practically they kind of needed to know. So then I went to my appointment thinking, okay, we're going to talk about it and then, like, see what the options are, and then I'll go report back to my therapist, and then I'll come back and have another assessment appointment where they kind of assess me for dysphoria symptoms. The first appointment, she was just like, okay, what's your kind of story? Why do you want to go on testosterone? And I was like, well, I have dysphoria and da-da-da, here's when I came out, here's kind of a very abridged version of what I've been explaining in this video. And she was like, okay, how does 0.4 milliliters sound as a dosage start? And I was like, and she was like, all right, I'm going to put it down. Like, it was so, all right, you need treatment. I've listened to what you've had to say. Time to prescribe the medication. And it was crazy because I wasn't expecting to get the prescription right away, but she could tell that I was ready through our conversation, and she was like, yeah, let's get this prescription. And she prescribed it right away. And then there were a few weird kind of hang-ups with the pharmacy where they didn't get it in. So I think it was like 3 days after they said I would be able to start was when I actually got to start. But then I went in for my appointment. The nurse helped me out, and I did my first shot, and that was when it began. And I was really happy. And I wasn't too concerned about, like, micro tracking, like, every little change. I was just like, well, it's gonna happen, and I'm just gonna go with it, and not every single day be, like, scrutinizing myself for changes. And I still am like that, and it was great. It made me really happy. And then 2 months later, I was able to get top surgery, and I was really worried that, they recommend you be on testosterone for 6 months before you start top surgery, before you have top surgery, just in case your body continues to really change and it messes with your results. But as you can see, for me, it was fine. It was perfectly fine. And I did, like my shoulders continued to broaden, my chest did fill out. As weird as that sounds, I got more muscular. I got more pec muscle going on after the surgery. So the shape of my body and my torso has changed, but it didn't fuck up my results at all. So being on T for 2 months, it was perfectly fine. And obviously, listen to your surgeon. But just based on my experience and a lot of other experiences that I've seen, not many, it's not super conventional, but if you're really young and you need top surgery as soon as possible, and you haven't been on testosterone for 6 months, you can make an educated choice about that, and it can end up just perfectly fine. So top surgery was the best experience of my life, one of the highlights of my literal entire life. Not because recovery was overly fun. It's a major surgery, but just knowing that I was finally flat. Oh, I was binding the whole time throughout all of high school, basically. So that was another big thing about dysphoria, but just the alleviation of finally I have the chest that I've always needed and wanted and known that I should have. And I felt so correct. And it healed up great. I used bio oil on the incisions for about I want to say 3 or 4 months, not very long, but I rubbed them down so they're super flat, which is the main thing I was worried about. And they have faded quite a bit. But I don't think they're going to fade much more than this. But yeah, so I felt like my life has finally started. I think I've said that before. Maybe not on camera, but I feel like my life has finally actually started since transitioning, since surgery especially. And it's I feel like I've been born finally. I recreated myself into the person that I'm supposed to be, and now I can finally actually go through life as me. And so it feels like everything before this was just this weird blur of a lot of suffering. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of my childhood, and especially once I hit the first puberty and all of middle and high school, is kind of a blur of suffering and feeling incorrect and kind of not really ever experiencing anything in my body. I was always detached. And now I'm finally living things through myself and in my own body, and very present in myself and all these experiences that I'm having. Even though I've transitioned only in the times of quarantine, which is also nuts, that I haven't been out in public as this yet. I almost went into a cocoon and transitioned, and now that I'm vaccinated and about to go off to college in person, it's I'm coming out of my cocoon as me. And it's such a trip because I'm finally, the few times that I've been out in public since getting vaccinated, I'm being correctly gendered just all the time by strangers and everyone, and I'm yo, is that real? Because it still feels really exciting and new, and holy shit, they correctly gendered me and they didn't even know who I was. And it's I'm still not used to it. And so it's gonna be so weird to go out in public and be finally perceived correctly and be holy shit, I'm being perceived and it is enjoyable. That's new. So Transition is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I am so happy. I am so me. I am so ready to go, like, have a life and be successful and try new things and not be scared and not be sad and not be in pain. And, like, one of my biggest fears when I was younger and throughout high school was that I wasn't going to get to grow up. That chance would be taken away from me. And especially, I was scared I wasn't going to get to grow up as a man. I wasn't going to get to reach the point where I would get to live an adult life as a man. And now I'm here. I made it. I overcame and beat out my worst fear and my worst pain. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so ready to get back out in the world as me. And my journey feels like it's come to an end and a new beginning at the same time. So that's my transition story. I'm going to continue to just do my shot every Monday as I do for the rest of my life, maybe. So I'm not going to be making any more update videos. But I'll keep making music, and maybe I'll post some talking videos on here if I feel like I have something to say. But that's the end of my update vlog series on my testosterone. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. And just remember that it does get better, and it will get better. All right.